Guys, I love South Park. It's a cartoon for any stage of life and a breakdown of society overall. The magic I think comes from how the characters represent meaning beyond their own personal experience, creating narrative possibilities for any story or current events. South Park doesn't just do the bare minimum, they go out of their way to craft the narrative with as much heart as comedic chops. The show wishes to teach behind its absurd adult animation. It's not just a show for crude young men, it's a show about life by crude wise men. The way that I see it, the show is just a way of us to look at Matt and Trey's life. Going through life as Stan and Kyle, using cartoon as a stand-in for complex current topics, and fleshing the ideas into thoughtful plots that are consistently excellently funny, deep, emotional, and introspective. See, the way it works is that you have Stan and Kyle who take up after the creators. That allows them to ground the show in the creators' very humanity, as Stan and Kyle act as links to the human world, and so they themselves are not treated generally as cartoon caricatures like most other elements of the show. So when you have somebody like Eric, it's just a cartoony caricature of all the bad things in generally society, right? So I would describe Kyle as a very self-righteous person, and I would say that it carries along with the sense that he has flaws and grows and changes, but his self-righteousness or his moral compass generally points him to the right direction, so he always wants to be better. Stan is more hands-on and less intuitive, but unlike Kyle, his sense of honor keeps him on a good path generally. If anything, Stan and Kyle make up a very human section of the show, which allows them to be sort of middlemen to all the absurdness. And ways these two make up the soul of the show, as they're human and they also must learn and grow throughout the series. They're the cartoon representations, their best effort to understand the world around them. South Park is like Matt and Trey's journal depicting American culture through the lens of what at first is a cartoon, but in the end ends up being kinda everything. Matt and Trey's devil in a metaphorical sense is their own antenna of sin. When I say South Park understands human nature, I mean it. They know humanity has its negatives. In fact, sometimes it's our best flaws as people that we find the best comedy. Cartman is more than just a chubby kid. He's the worst, not just in himself, but in all of people. He represents the funny, charming, common con man that leads you through a dark road. Cartman is also as old as time, smart and wise. He's the bad of everyone, our shadow, the part of ourselves we try to push down, but sadly sometimes Cartman is needed as the balance of everything needs to push between good and evil. Yes, Cartman is evil, but he's also kind of the funniest thing ever because Cartman is honest. He's charming and he's capable. He knows what he knows what we want to hear, and he understands us very well. He's our friend even, the seductive nature of sin. Butters is virtue to me. Always a person we want to see win because he never cheated or tries to trick people. Butters is always seen with Cartman, maybe even a funny duo, or maybe something deeper. It's often the naive that get taken advantage of, though Butters isn't just naive, he's all of the good qualities of humanity. I feel a lot of kids start as, but as more and more Cartman passes by, we become more like Stan and Kyle, smarter, more cynical, trying to balance what there is between Butters and Cartman. Butters and Cartman are funny because they basically make up the two ends of an extreme spectrum. A regular person should strive to be in the middle, let not his virtue be confused with weakness. Weirdly enough, Butters always allows him to shine, and he shines next to Cartman because Cartman allows him to shine. I could get lost in the symbolism of it all, but ironically, South Park is the best school you could attend. As dumb as that may sound, it's actually there to try to teach you, and it respects your intellect. With South Park, you don't just get a good show or just a cartoon, you get smart humor and dumb humor, and you get deeper activity below the surface. Do you guys know what male humor is? Let me give you a hint. Think Filthy Frank. Guy humor is all about pushing the bounds of what is and isn't acceptable. Guy humor is basically the most intrusive, weird, rage-baiting thing that you can do and say, cause men are bros, you know? We like to blow off steam by creating artistic aggression, pushing offensive bounds. and creating an extreme so as we may gauge our fellow bros. South Park is like one of those guy loves that is special, never backing down in its artistic expression, making you feel the full spectrum of life. Even though by the next scene we're probably crying, feeling the full extent of our humanity, South Park to me is the pinnacle of what full uncensored American comedy can be. South Park both represents the time, but becomes its own time capsule with its own value, creating a cartoon with everything. You got people like Randy, who's like an adult that still wants to be a kid. And Randy is one of the funniest characters next to Eric, as there's a lot of people in the world that are like that collectively. Randy is the second funniest character in the show thanks to his relatability and his range. If Cartman is pure evil, then Randy is like dumb evil for the sake of the rush. Butters is all about virtue, a person that can have, but also acting as the perfect useful idiot. I think what's important to remember is that South Park always chooses to go beyond the surface, and even though something is always cartoony, there's comedy and truth to weigh down those things. So when you have South Park, you don't just have something that is meaningless, you have something that's very meaningful because it's carried by all these other subtexts. So South Park is very honest and it's very real in the way that it chooses to tackle its subject matter. I feel like the main takeaway from the overall lesson I'm trying to get across is how in real life we also see this impulse to want to characterize most things around us, and what we see in people is just a bunch of cartoony traits. But if we choose to analyze it deeply and actually use our critical thoughts, we can probably read people and maybe come to closer understandings of how they got to that situation. And it's the difference between humanizing somebody and wanting to view them as a cartoon. South Park is like the melting point between those two ideas, and I feel like the fact that we get to interpret their worlds and they're so honest about how they're dealing with most things. South Park is a special place for people that look for honesty, especially nowadays where things are getting replaced with artificial intelligence or non-human entities. The fact that in the past you could look at a scene from a play and you could find all the actors, to nowadays that the people in the TV might not even be real people, and it's fascinating how you just get this deflation of value. But I'm going off on another tangent there. South Park is a touchstone of pop culture, honesty, conscience, education, and comedy overall. But those are mainly my thoughts. I recently moved houses, and I haven't had time to work because now I gotta look for another job. But I'm trying my best to get some content out. Anyways, if you listen to this long, thank you, and yeah, stay safe.